Hello, coaches. My name is Dawn Brown, and I work for Mosaic Group, a national consulting firm with expertise in community and behavioral health interventions. Today, I'm here to discuss motivation, including the brain science that impacts motivation and tips for improving your motivation if needed. I personally have been struggling with motivation for some activities that I previously enjoyed. Maybe some of you can relate. This led me to think about why. Why was I now struggling to engage in activities when it had never been a problem before? I tried all of the typical tricks, to kind of get my head in the game, as they say, as I do believe in the power of positive thinking, but unfortunately, that wasn't working either. So I started reading, doing a little research, and trying to better understand motivation. And I was really shocked to learn that it wasn't just my willpower that was involved. That was not the instrumental factor in my motivation or potentially my lack thereof. So, what was impacting my motivation, you might ask? Dopamine. Dopamine was impacting my motivation in a way that I hadn't known about before. So, how does dopamine impact motivation? Well, the current research suggests that dopamine is actually what encourages us to participate in the activity or not, based on the perceived reward from the activity. Wow, right? If we enjoy the activity, then our dopamine levels may increase and we are then motivated to engage in the activity. But conversely, the same levels of dopamine may make us not motivated for a task that we don't find rewarding or we potentially find harmful or dangerous. So I had been trained to really think about dopamine as coming after the pleasurable activity, and that our motivation was in place to be able to get that dopamine increase. So, really, though, the new research actually indicates that our dopamine levels rise in advance of the activity. Really, a paradigm shift in how we think about that. So, what does this mean? It means that dopamine is tied to our motivation much earlier in the process than originally thought, and that both of those things, both the dopamine and the motivation, are also tied to our reward centers. So let's talk briefly about rewards and what that means. So there's internal or intrinsic motivation, which really involves engaging in a behavior because it's personally rewarding, essentially performing an activity that for its own sake rather than for the desire of some external reward. So essentially, the behavior in and of itself is its own reward. Then we have external or extrinsic motivation, which is when we are motivated to perform a behavior or engage in an activity to earn a reward or avoid a punishment. In this case, you can think about it as engaging in the behavior not because you enjoy it or because you find it satisfying, but in order to get something in return or to avoid something unpleasant. So, what does this mean for me and my struggle with motivation? In my case, my rewards have changed. That's what this activity of investigation and research, really led me to understand. As my work and my other activities have begun to look different due to COVID, my motivation was changing because what I found to be my intrinsic motivation, I wasn't getting the same rewards. And so therefore I was less motivated to engage in those same activities. So this really did make sense to me. And it also helped to make it something I could work with. So, this thankfully helped me to understand that it didn't mean that I was destined to become a slacker or I was no longer going to, like things that I previously liked. It didn't mean that I couldn't control that dopamine. It just might look a little different. It wasn't based necessarily just on my willpower. So there are some ways that if you would like to increase your dopamine and therefore increase your motivation, there are some things that you can do. So number one, you can keep a list of things to do and record your accomplishments. So no task is too small, and keeping track of those successes really does help you to potentially receive that dopamine increase as you see progress for kind of checking off those items on your list. Also share with others. You want them to understand your accomplishments and your challenges. And it's not necessarily that you're telling them to, because they're going to, be able to give you something directly per se, but it's really about the idea that, you're able to talk through it. You're able to, again, share those accomplishments as well as any challenges that you may have. And, the communication really does create the opportunity for positive reinforcement and also just an opportunity to talk through things. And so this also is good for increasing your dopamine levels. Additionally, don't multitask. So committing to work on one project or, activity that you're focusing on is really important. And so by focusing on the task at hand, you're able to really dedicate your efforts, your brain power, your time to do it as most effectively as possible, which, when you have a positive result, that in the end is going to be good for increasing those dopamine levels. So use your energy just to focus on that one activity. And then additionally, you want to focus on the end result. So you want to be thinking about what it is you're looking to achieve, kind of thinking of it as a light at the end of the tunnel, what your end result is. And so, how great you're going to feel when you achieve that or, reach that goal. So that's really important. So continue to look ahead as you are going through things. So there you have it. It's not too late to get motivated, and there are tangible things that you can do to improve your dopamine and therefore your motivation. I already have started to, evaluate that process, and maybe you will too. So please know that you are capable of amazing things. Be kind to yourself, and until next time, be well.